a K-pop idol and Jungkook is your stalker who is obsessed with you and follows you everywhere. He killed 2 young boys who vulgarly commented on your body. Last night he kidnapped you and had his ways with you. The bright sunlight falls directly on her beautiful face. She slowly opened her eyes as she scanned her surroundings. Everything seemed usual to her. She hurriedly sat straight while the memories from yesterday's night came into her mind. Was it all a dream? She spoke, but her throat hurts. She placed her hand over her neck and gently massaged it. Guess it was not a dream. She got up from the bed and stood in front of the mirror. Her eyes were swollen and so does her lips. Deep red marks on her neck were clear evidence of how she did yesterday. Her eyes filled with tears just at the thought of that. Jungkook looked to both sides and jumped inside Wyan's house through a window. He scanned his surroundings, but she was not in the living room. He knew where she would be. He hummed a tune as he went upstairs into her room. There, he saw her lying on the floor, sleeping peacefully while moonlight cast a shine on her face from the opened window. He had never seen someone prettier than her. He saw her neck, which was still blue because of his tight and rough hold on her neck yesterday. It looked more attractive to him that way, with his marks. He wants to mark her whole body like this, and just the thought of biting her sensitive parts made his thing pulse inside his jeans. He went near her and caressed her hair gently. He doesn't want to wake her up. He had done this many times. He gently picked her up in his arms and placed her on the bed as he tucked her under the sheets. His gaze averted at her pink lips, which were slightly open. He was losing his control, how hard he wanted to bite on them and make them bleed. He moved his lips near her as he got his tongue out. He licked her lips slowly, tasting her sweet lily and peaches scent. He hurriedly got up from the bed. He knows if he stays there one more minute, then she would be under him crying and begging him to leave her. He pulled his phone out of his pocket and clicked her pictures. That's another thing he does every time he comes to see her sleeping. He glanced at her one last time as he left from there. A sudden sound echoed in the room as Wyan tried to find her phone with closed eyes. Her manager Taehyung was calling her and it was 6 in the morning. Tae, what is it? You have your dance practice today. You know we have your shoot in few days. But I have practiced the choreography literally 1,000 times. I'm well aware, but you know how strict Hoseok is, and he'll not tolerate any mistakes. But it's my order. I'm sending the driver soon. He hung up the call as soon as he said that. She sighed as she stretched her arms. That was when realization hit her. Wait a second, wasn't I sleeping on the floor? She tasted sandalwood on her lips. She licked her lip again. That scent she knew whom it belonged to, Jungkook. The day at her dance practice went well. Nothing negative happened. Hoseok had been a good mentor since her debut when it comes to dance. After the practice, Taehyung dropped Wyan back home. She even asked him to come inside, but he declined her offer right away. Maybe he was still angry at her because of her cold behavior that day. She opened the front door of her home as she got inside. She locked it securely and then turned around to see that it was all dark because all the lights were off. She was holding a glass of water as she turned on the lights. Her eyes widened and the glass slipped from her hands unknowingly, shattering into pieces when she saw a manly figure sitting on the couch as if it was his own home. Wyan, you home? He said casually. Even the sound of glass breaking doesn't affect him. Her body started trembling while her breathing hastened. She doesn't take much time to think and stepped back slowly, ready to run from there, but stopped when she heard his next words. Don't you ever think about it. I'm not in the mood for chase play today. She gulped hard. She wanted to run, but his voice had this authority that even thinking about disobeying him terrified her. Come, sit on my lap, he ordered. No, she replied while stuttering. He turned his head to her side. The look on his face today was beyond terrifying. He was not amused by her answer at all, while his jaw clenched. Say that one more time and I'll make sure you never walk again, he warned right away. You cannot order me, she said while breathing heavily. He chuckled as he got up from the couch. walking towards her shaking figure. His steady steps towards her were making her legs weak like jelly. She already started moving backwards and stopped when her back touched the wall behind her. Soon after, he was standing in front of her, dangerously close. "You are going to be 7 different shades of red after this little braveness of yours." Her eyes widened as she tried to run, but before she could do that, he slammed her against the wall and turned her around roughly. Now her back was facing him, and he used his other hand to pull her skirt up, revealing her things. "What are you doing?" He looked at it, which was soft and round. He can't wait to turn it into deep red color with his handprints. "Count," he said in his cold voice as he gently rubbed his hand on her cheek. Right after, he smacked it hard without any warning, and she screamed from her lungs while her body jerked. He could see a red handprint taking its place on her soft cheek. She cried again loudly as he hit her again at the same spot. "Count, or I'll never stop until you pass out like last time." "Please, it hurts," she cried, but he pushed her more against the wall. "I know it hurts, baby, but that's what happens when you don't do what I say. Now count," she yelps when he hit her again on the same spot. 1, he slapped her again hard. 2, 3, and it continued for a while. Her screaming and crying were the only noises echoed in the whole house. Her cheek started throbbing with a burning sensation, a pain that felt like it was tearing her skin apart. Her legs became weak as she wasn't able to hold her weight on them anymore. He grabbed her from the waist and held her in place as he slapped her again. Her left cheek was unharmed, completely opposite to the right one. With each smack, he increased the intensity of his hit, making it unbearable for her to continue this torture. She cried out before the count of 14 falls from her lips. "Please, I can't take it anymore." He hit her again, completely ignoring her begging. "This isn't a punishment, Ryan. It's a lesson, and you will have to learn it." He gently rubbed his hand on her red cheek as he adored the art he made. "Red is the perfect color on your skin, Ryan." The next smack was the strongest till now as he clenched his jaw and hit her with full force. "Stop, please, it hurts." He hit her again with more intensity as her begging was motivating him to be more harsh. "That's it, baby, cry for me." One last slap as he removed his hand from her body. As soon as he did it, she falls on the floor and she screamed when her body touched the cold floor. It was so painful. She lay there on the floor, crying loudly as he sat down at her level and rubbed her with his hands. "Next time, I shouldn't have to repeat myself," he warned in his deep voice. "Now, I want you to get up and sit on my lap," he ordered as he walked towards the couch and sat there as he was sitting before. She slowly got up from the floor and took small steps towards him. Not in hell she would ever disobey him now. He pat one of his thighs and she sat on it slow and steady. Her hiccups never stopped as she was still crying uncontrollably. He gently rubbed her back and cooed at her while bouncing his legs slowly as if she was a little baby. She hugged him annoyingly while weeping on his shoulder as he hugged her back tightly, gently rubbing her back. "It's gonna be all right." She kept crying for a while through hiccups as he cooed at her all the time. She must be mad because she felt calm in his embrace. After a few hours, 2 different snoring voices were heard throughout the living room. They both don't realize when they slept on the couch together. Jungkook felt some weight on top of his body and he opened his eyes. He was lying on the couch as Wine was sleeping on top of him, hugging him tightly as her body was pressed hard against his chest. He kissed her forehead. "Good night, my Wine. After all these years, finally I'm able to hold you against my chest again." The bright sunlight cast a shadow on Wine's gorgeous face. Her head was placed in Jungkook's lap. He was sitting and they were still on the couch in the living area. She shifts in her sleep and felt a strong essence of sandalwood capturing her nostrils. She knows to whom it belongs. Her eyes flicked open. The first thing her eyes saw was his deep, piercing gaze penetrating deep into her soul. A slight smile was carved on his pink lips. His looks don't go well with his sinister personality. He brought his hand near her face and gently glided his thumb on her cheeks and lips. He placed his thumb on her lips while gently rubbing her lower lip. Open. What? She stuttered. Open your mouth or I'll make it, and I promise it will hurt. Her eyes showed fear while her lower lip quivered. She doesn't want to disobey him, not anymore. She slowly parted her lips and he smirked while seeing the amount of fear she had for him. He wanted her to be scared of him, terrified of his violent desires. He inserted his thumb inside her mouth. Suck. She looked at him with big shocked eyes. His features doesn't soften a bit. She wanted to deny, but not after what happened yesterday night. She started sucking on his thumb while he looked directly into her eyes. Her fearful eyes. Humiliation was written all over her face and it satisfied him. His other hand moved between her inner thighs. Her heart rate increased by sensing his cold touch going extremely close to her most intimate part. In no seconds, he cupped it with his hand savagely. The sucking on his thumb stopped and she whimpered. He rubbed his hand as he slapped on it harshly. Her body jerked upwards as she tried to move away, but he pushed her down right away. Now, did I tell you to stop? She shook her head while the corner of her eyes filled with tears. Don't you dare stop, not until I ask you to. He warned in his cold tone and she sucked on his thumb again. All she felt was fear mixed with embarrassment at the moment. Does that hurt, baby? He asked as he looked at her while hot tears found their way out of her eyes. She nodded while sniffling and he removed his thumb from her mouth. Then cry, he demanded. He loves to see her screaming and begging just with his slight touch. Her pleading makes him. His torturous action came to a halt as the doorbell rang. He cursed under his breath. We will continue from here soon, he said with authority as he kissed her forehead and left her settled on the couch blankly. He jumped out of the window without glancing back at her. She got up from the couch while wiping her tears away. Another night. The night today was quite dark, cold and still, just like the silence before the thunderstorm. Suddenly her breathing hastened in her sleep as she moved her head in order to get out of her subconsciousness. Sweat formed on her forehead. The flashes she was seeing in her dream were something she had never seen before. It was painful for her just to see them. Her heart aching and her eyes were shedding tears. The dream in which she is on a hospital bed, her whole body filled with sharp deep cuts and her head was badly injured. The smell of chemicals, the sound of monitors beeping, nurses and doctors shouting. Her eyes were red swollen while thick tears escaped from them. It was a kind of pain that someone feels when they have lost a part of themselves. She doesn't know what she lost, but she knew that she did lose something that was important, precious, irreplaceable and beyond price. He screamed as she sat straight right away. Her breathing hastened, her chest moving rapidly, and her eyes shed tears uncontrollably. The same pain emerging from her heart, but this time massaging over her chest doesn't reduce it. That's when she felt someone's hand over her shoulder. She flinched at the sudden touch and instantly looked at her side. She had expected that he would be there. This time she wasn't scared of him, but instead she felt safe. She felt peace in just looking at him, at her cook. He sat beside her on the bed. He had never seen her this scared. She doesn't know why, but his light touch brought her comfort and she hugged him while she spoke in a quavering voice. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Please, please forgive me. She doesn't know why she was saying that, but her heart told her to say so, as if it would lessen the pain building inside her. He kissed her forehead as he rubbed her back, holding her into his strong embrace. It's all right, baby. Stop crying. His touch brought her calmness, and so does his voice. He gently moved his hand at the hem of her shirt. He pulled it upwards, and she let him. He gently slid his hands at her back. She felt the pain in her heart fully substituted by his warm touch. He guided her to lay on the bed, gently letting her back touch the mattress. He also stepped inside the covers with her. He pulled her body closer to him, which she gladly did, hiding her head between the crook of his neck, hugging him tightly. His hands slid at her back so lightly as if she was a glass and using a little force would break her. She was still crying but silently. "Close your eyes," he said with authority, but it felt more like concern. She did, and in few minutes she was sleeping again, snoring lightly. "Is it happening? What I feared?" The shoot was finally finished. The cheering of all the people clearly defined their happiness. The staff members demanded a club night out from Taehyung. He, being the good manager he is, said yes right away. Just then her phone vibrated. Her smile faded as she looked at the text message she just received. "You are not allowed to go there." She doesn't reply though, but she also doesn't want to disobey him. She clearly explained to Taehyung that she doesn't want to go to the club, but he, being adamant, dragged her there. She was wearing a red shiny one-piece dress with high heels. Her looks were completely opposite to what she was feeling inside: panic, distress, and most importantly fear. Fear that he would hurt her again like the last time he did when she disobeyed him. However, Taehyung's attention was on her only. Looking at her, he was not able to control his feelings. Suddenly, a girl tripped and the glass full of martini lands on Wyan's dress. "Wyan, you go clean up your dress a little," she nodded. She entered the restroom and no one was there, only the loud music was heard. She felt as if she was being watched, her heart racing like it would explode any time like a volcano. She rubbed a wet tissue on her dress where the martini was spilled. She repeated the process completely engrossed by the little task she was doing. "Ah!" she yelped when someone slapped her body from behind. She slowly turned back hoping it was him, but her eyes were met with a pale-skinned girl. She looked drunk. "What did you just do?" Wyan glared at her, but she giggled. "Sorry, you look so hot. I couldn't control myself, so I hit it." She shrugged so casually as if they were friends. Wyan dumped the tissue in the garbage before going downstairs. Just when she was about to leave, a strong hand wrapped around her mouth as she was pulled back. She clawed at the hand with her long nails, but nothing happened. She was pushed into a small dark room. The door clicked locked and her mouth was released after that. She tried to open the door, but it didn't open. The corner of her eyes were filled with tears. She could feel his presence near her. She felt terrible just at the thought of that. It was dark everywhere. "Who are you?" she asked while stuttering. Suddenly, the lights flicked on and she flinched at the suddenness. She saw those deep dark eyes. It was him. She knew it would be him. He was sitting on the chair, his one leg crossed over the other. Her eyes widened. He looked scary today, same as the day he punished her, or more like taught her a lesson. She thumped on the door as if someone might hear her. "Help! Is someone out there?" "Strip," he ordered, and the world around her stopped. She gulped hard. What happened yesterday night was something beyond her control. She doesn't even know why she let him remove her shirt and slept while hugging him. "I shouldn't have to repeat myself." He stared at her from head to toe. "Don't make me take you home and punish you in the hardest way possible. Do it right now." "Please, I'm sorry." "Do you know what happens when you disobey my orders?" She nodded and looked down while crying. His hand moved to her throat as he grabbed it with a little force. She gasped, "Please." A smile appeared on his lips the way she begs. It encouraged him to tear her dress apart and take her against the wall. "You're so cute. Begging like anything could get you out of this. It makes me, hun," he said, whispering the last line in her ear as her body trembled with fear. He doesn't waste any more time and captured her trembling lips into his soft ones. Her eyes widened as she tried to push him away, but what could she do in front of someone extremely powerful than her? His grip on her throat tightened as he pulled his lips out from hers, staring deep into her eyes. "If you don't kiss me back, I'll slit your throat." It made her feel more threatened. She cried, "Do you understand?" She nodded, her eyes red from crying, and he kissed her again. This time so roughly as if he was sucking the life out of her. and she kissed him back. She could sense him smirking even though her eyes were closed. The metallic taste she was tasting was the evidence that her lips were surely bleeding. His grip on her throat tightened more. With every passing second, she was panting for air, hitting his chest to let her go, but he doesn't budge an inch. He was restricting her oxygen. This was not a normal kiss. It was a punishment for disobeying his orders. It was breath play. He knows soon after she would pass out due to the lack of air, and he wanted just that. Her eyes felt heavy, and her feet weren't able to hold her weight on them anymore, and just as he assumed, she passed out. He still held her from her waist tightly, kissing the hell out of her. He kissed her forehead. "You did good, dear Ryan," and placed her on the floor. Covering his face with a mask, he left the room. On the stairs, his eyes met with an impatient Taehyun. He knows he was her manager. He also knew he would find her, so she was safe. Jungkook went out of the club and sat inside his car as a drunk girl came out. The same girl who touched what's only his obsession. He stopped the car in front of her. He rolled the window down as she stared at him. "Sorry, handsome, I'm not into boys." He smiled. "No problem, sweetheart. I could give you a ride then. Obviously, if you don't mind." She chuckled and opened the door while sitting in the passenger seat. "How could I say no to a cutie like you?" He smirked as he pressed on the gas pedal. God knows where he would take her. But one thing was sure. Today was her last night alive.